Welcome, everyone, to Hope and Health TV once again. I'm Dr. Mark.
And I'm Dr. Michele.
And we're still
M&M without the sugar.
I know you like that. So we haven't done that in a while, have we?
We have not. M&M without the sugar.
We always want to say thank you so much. We've seen a lot of you in many of our speaking engagements, whether it be in Tampa or Tulsa or Norman, and many of you came up and had said hello, and we're so grateful for your support and your encouragement as always. And whenever we're out and about, come say hi. We really want to hear from you. So, whether I know we're up there speaking sometimes, but just come to our booth or wherever you see us and say hello and give us a nice big mask-free hug or a handshake, whatever you choose to do, which is perfectly okay by us. But we're grateful to be a part of your lives, and we hope these broadcasts like this really help you. So tonight we've got a very special one going on because we're going to talk about some things we haven't talked about before, and we're going to talk about some areas that are unique, they're special, and of course that makes it really interesting because as we touch these areas again, it expands our ability to help you. We want to do that. So we always want to start off with kind of the 7 areas that we talk about a lot. So let's review those.
Well, number 1 at the top of the food chain is nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. The most important medical decision that you make every day, 3 times a day, sometimes 3 times a day and 2 snacks, is at the end of your fork. So nutrition is
I'm doing fork curls.
Very important. Fork curls, yes,
Right.
yes. And if that fork gets heavy with a bunch of garbage, it's going to weigh your system down.
So that's why it needs to be a light fork curl with salad on the end of it, right?
It's better to fast than eat garbage.
Yeah,
You're not a human garbage disposal. Neither are we.
No. Not at all. Next one is sleep. We don't want to forget that one. Sleep is a big deal. It's underestimated and underappreciated. We need to be sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, regardless of anything that gets in our way. Now, we know there's anomalies that come along the way, travel or things that occur, but we still need to make really a promise to self that we're going to spend that quality time sleeping because that's the time we can regenerate and rebuild.
That's right. And if you don't get enough sleep, which is a 5-letter word, you might start saying things like 4-letter words, like I'm sleepy. I'm
that's funny.
Sleepy. You might start missing putting it all together, if you will.
Brain doesn't work right. Stress management's a big deal. We did a few weeks ago talk a lot about that. So stress is massive. It's not the overt killer. Or not the covert killer. It's the overt killer right now. It's a big deal. We've got to get a handle on that. And listening to stuff that's fear-based is causing the majority of it. So stop it. Stop listening to fear-based stuff. Stop talking fear-based stuff.
Yes. Next is movement. Sitting is the new smoking. If we're sitting too much, we're not moving blood and oxygen and nutrients to our vital tissues and our vital organs. And therefore, if tissues don't get the blood and oxygen and the vital nutrients that they need, they're not going to function optimally.
That's right. And tonight, we're going to talk about DNA in just a moment, but that's obviously number 5 on our list of the 7 pillars. So we're going to go into that in just a few moments. But what's number 6?
Number 6 is hormones. Now, there are lots of hormones in the human body. It's not just male and female sex hormones. It's also insulin. Insulin's a hormone. Thyroid's a hormone. Vitamin D is a hormone. All of these hormones interact in a very magical way. And if they get out of balance, you're not going to feel optimal.
And we'll spend several weeks talking with you about hormones over time. Our final area in our 7 pillars is peptides. Peptides are short chains of amino acids that we use to rebuild things like brain, bone, muscle, and lose fat. It's really interesting. But peptides are a cool tool that we use many times in the clinic with many, many people. We use a lot of peptides ourselves, and we'll spend time talking to you about those. The overarching keys, which is always really important for us to understand over all these 7 areas, is going to be spiritual and emotional wellness. And we've got to get there because the majority of all physical manifestations of disease, as we've always said, is rooted in spiritual and emotional brokenness.
Yes. And so with that being said, we always want to talk about these important components of nutrition. We want to remember the list of inflammatory foods. So what are those foods? It's sugars and artificial sweeteners.
You should know it by now. We share it every single week. These are inflammatory.
That's right. Fried foods, MSG, monosodium glutamate, and other fillers. Make sure you turn the label over and look at the back of what you're putting in your temple. If you can't read it and you don't understand it, it's probably not good for you. Processed food. We all know sodas are full of poison. Not only are they full of sugar, but all the other garbage in there, carbonation, etc., and otherwise will eat your bones. You don't want to drink excessive amounts of caffeine. Now, we didn't say no caffeine, but we got to put a limit on the amount of caffeine that we drink, as well as on the amount of alcohol that we drink. You got to minimize breads and grains, if not get them completely out. Those genetically modified breads and grains are inflammatory. And then there's soy and corn, and these foods are inflammatory, disease-causing to young and old individuals all the time.
So get them out.
Not just one day of the year, 365 days of the year.
Got to get them out. And then we have our anti-inflammatory foods, which we've talked about many times. And you can see them there. You know, there's quality proteins that you see the buzzwords right next to them. You really need to understand that. Healthy oils and fats. Again, low glycemic fruits and above ground non-root vegetables. Why do we say low glycemic fruits and above ground non-root vegetables? Because most people are carrying too much fat. So we want to drive down the blood sugar, thereby driving down insulin. We'll talk about that over time, and thereby driving down the fat storage. So there, you could actually lose some fat by doing that. So make sure that you're really on those anti-inflammatory foods, because they're anti-inflammatory to every one of us all the time, young and old. And we would be remiss. A lot of times we want to know where we should start with things. And many of you actually have joined us on our 120-day health transformation program. And you can do that because that is important to get into, because it takes about 90 days to really change your lifestyle. But you can go to Sherwood.tv and scroll about halfway down, and you'll see I'm interested in the health transformation program. So click on that link. You can see the link right there. Click on that link and you will be directed to a Zoom call, which is happening every 2 weeks. And we go over that with you live on a Zoom call and give you all the different variations of all of our 120-day plans. You can pick what you want. It's kind of like a smorgasbord, if you will. And then we've got our 40-day reset plan. You can go there. That's like if you know what to do, you just kind of got off course, you need 40 days to say, tell me what to do. Kick me right in the backside. I need 40 days of plan. We give you that. We give you everything you need for that. We give you a detox and anti-inflammatory food plan. We give you some homeopathy to lose fat and to maintain muscle and help you with cravings. We give you omega-3s and Ds. We cover that for you during that 40 days, and we get that turned around. And that is Sherwood.tv/40/40, and that's 40 days to reset, recalibrate, regroup, get your life back on track again. So that's Sherwood.tv/40. So we got to get on one of those plans. So let's talk about DNA tonight. DNA is an interesting concept that we don't talk about much. So what is the definition of DNA?
Well, first of all, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid.
It's a big word.
DNA. DNA is a self-replicating material that's present in all human beings and most organisms as the main constituent of what's called chromosomes. Now, we know chromosomes are given to us, one by our father, one by our mother, 23, 46 total, coming from one from your father, one from your
It's like two potatoes smashing into each other and making this new mashed potato. Like Mash Michelle, Mash Mark. It's a new thing, right? It's the one we're all unique.
Well, DNA is also the carrier of genetic information, and it's the fundamental and distinctive characteristic or qualities of someone or something, especially when it's regarded as unchangeable. However, what you put on it, the environment can influence your genes, which is crazy. Genes have changed literally 2% in 10,000 years. And we have all of these diseases that are coming forth. And where I was like, oh, it's my genes, it's my genes, it's my genes.
Nope.
Genes are the loaded gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. So just because you're born with a certain set of genes does not mean that those genes have to be expressed in a negative way. If we know how to take care of our bodies and our temple, feed it right, rest it right, put the right supplements on board, supplement it right, hormone balance, put this whole picture together, that genetic outcome is a positive one.
Yeah, it's a big deal because a lot of people ask, well, what in the world are in my DNA? What is that? And, it's like DNA is made of nucleotides. So nucleotides are going to be things that are like, consider them like the structures of DNA. DNA is written in sort of an alphabetic code, A, T, C, G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Those are big words, but it doesn't matter. Just know that those little bitty nucleotides make up your DNA, and how those nucleotides are arranged gives your DNA its arrangement, and therefore its function. So our DNA carries the recipes for things to happen in our life, and I think that's really cool when you look at it. So the little structures called nucleotides make up DNA, and the DNA then has recipes for making things like proteins and enzymes. Now, the best analogy that we know of to talk about is the dam analogy. So you can see on the screen right now a picture of a dam, and above the dam there's a reservoir. There are lots of water, but below the dam you see that rough water where the water's let out of that dam because that big brick wall there is separating the reservoir from the river. Now, if you look at it like this, if we are people that live downstream, and let's say we're on the edge of the water, and the water starts to come up and get in our house. Well, medicine, what it has in its tool chest is to throw a sandbag at you. So you put the sandbag down. The water comes up more. Medicine says, I got another sandbag. I'm going to throw a sandbag at you. Well, you get the idea. Before long, you got multiple sandbags, but nobody figured out why the water came up. So we go back upstream and we see that big concrete wall that you see right here once again on the screen. Now, that big concrete wall is your genes, and your genes interact with what's up ahead of them, the reservoir. So that means that the environment is analogous with the reservoir, and your genes are analogous with the dam, and this environmental genetic interaction creates the expression, which is going to be the river. And so if you can understand how the dam works and what to put in it and what to put behind it, you can prevent flooding downstream. Flooding would be diseases. So there you go. There's what we call the dam analogy, or the DNA analogy, or somebody wanted to say, funny, the damn gene analogy. So don't take that wrong, but you get the idea. So this is good because we test certain types of genes. We do. And the things that can be determined with genetic testing is we can determine if you have a predisposition to things like Alzheimer's disease, even heart disease, inflammatory conditions, even obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Now, not only predisposition, it also allows us to find out how to support your system to create resiliency. So once again, the genes are the loaded gun, and the environment pulls the trigger. So just because you have genes that say you might have a certain outcome, if we support those genes in a very healthy manner by putting the right things on top of them, we don't ever have to have that negative or bad outcome. And the cool thing about that is, because we have the ability to get the right actionable genes from you, we've done this, we do this like literally every day with everybody, all of our persons we get to deal with in our community. But if we have that information, we're able to create a lifestyle plan that's personalized and customized just for you to make you disease resilient. So if, we've just we haven't even scratched the surface of DNA, but we may talk about a little bit next week just to kind of dive a little deeper into this. But the idea behind it is, if you want to do that, and if you're interested in do that, we can do that for you. We just simply send you a kit, and you do the sample yourself and send that back to us, and then we get it analyzed in our lab, and then we schedule a time with you to go over that. So if you're interested in doing the DNA, you can with us. We're very happy to go over that with you, and we do it a lot. I would say we're experts at that, at these genes that we deal with. We want to make you disease resilient because we all got work to do. But if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at sherwood.tv, of course, and we are easily contacted, and you just say, I heard you guys on His Glory, and I want to do the DNA test, and then we'll get back in touch with you and explain to you what all is involved in that, the cost and all that kind of stuff. So remember, DNA, it's a one-time thing you do. You're not going to change it. So, when you do it, it's not something like a blood test that you redo. So valuable information. Highly encourage you, if you're out there and you say, I'm at all interested, do it. It's worth it. So if you want to do it again, reach out to us at sherwood.tv. And I think we probably shouldn't even next week go into a little bit of specificities on it, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's just really, it's intriguing to know what you actually can do if you understand your genetics.
Absolutely. When we get right back after this special message, we're going to talk to you about an interesting ingredient in our daily multi-complete. Bet you hadn't heard of this one before. You might have heard of it, but I bet you didn't know of all its functions. So we'll talk about that next. Stay with us.
My health was pretty much the pits. I couldn't figure out why. Compared to everyone around me, I thought I was the healthy one. I wasn't on a whole lot of medications, but yet I didn't feel good. I was always struggling. I knew that I needed to do something, but at that time, I just didn't know where to go. A few years ago, I noticed I just didn't seem to have the energy that I used to have. Things were just changing, and I wasn't really sure if it's just because I was getting old or if maybe something was going on with my health. All I wanted to do was just go to work, come home, eat dinner, and sit around and watch TV until I went to bed. I just didn't seem to have much energy for anything else. It was a real struggle in the mornings for me to get up and get around. Nobody really could tell at work because I just put on my happy face, but usually by the time I got home from work, that was about all I had left. Having those types of limitations and those struggles with energy, I was really concerned about the rest of my life. I had no idea what was in the future with the limited energy that I had. I would come home from exercise and I would feel so horrible that it kind of scared me, and I wasn't benefiting from it. In fact, it was making me more tired and more feeling unhealthy. I don't really know that I thought I had any extreme health issues at the time, but I did start to get really, really sick. I had painful knees, painful elbows. I had spots popping out all over my body. I was pretty sick and really concerned with the rest of my life. And then with the doctors not being able to find out what was wrong, that just led me to go to another doctor and another doctor. And after about 4 or 5 doctors and expensive testing, I did get diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and I was talking with one of my friends, Shelly Ashey, about my Hashimoto's because it was pretty new to me. I didn't know much about it. And she said, well, I have that too. And she said, I got some relief from seeing Dr. Marks and Dr. Michele. When I first went to Dr. Michele, the first thing that she did was just, give me some hope, and was very sympathetic about how I was feeling and kind of explained some things that made sense to me. And I left there feeling like things were going to get brighter for me as far as my health. I was so surprised when I did go see Dr. Mark, though, with how unhealthy I was physically. I hadn't been on the scales in 20 years. And that was shocking, to say the least. The foods in the nutrition plan that he gave me introduced me to the right types of foods. And within a couple of weeks, I could tell a difference. But before I'd seen Dr. Mark, the only vegetable that I was able to eat was canned green beans. So that sounds pretty pathetic, but that was about all I could do. And I was eating more vegetables cooked properly and seeing results and my stomach feeling better. And that was such a relief. I just went in this wanting to feel better and to feel healthy and to be able to move around and enjoy life. And I've lost 53 pounds, and that's such an added bonus. Now, all my exercising, I just feel so energetic, and I walk into the gym like I own it, and I do all my exercising, and I walk out like I just, did the best thing for my body, and it's just such a great feeling. And I can come home and I can do things the rest of the day or the rest of the night. I feel good. Life is fun. It's exciting again. And so if there's anything in this that you can gain from it, is that you can feel good too. Hopefully this might inspire you to take that first phone call, that first step into getting healthy. You won't regret it.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us and joining us here on Hope and Health TV. We hope you're getting a lot of hope, and we hope that your hope is fueling your health. So there you go. We, as you know, have right now 3 formulations that we recommend. And those formulations we've talked about many, many times over the last several weeks are Essential DK, our Daily Multi-Complete, and our Omega 1000. When you look at what that is, you're getting the full gamut of what we have seen to be deficient. And you can see all of the pictures of them right there in the links. We have, again, the Essential DK, which has 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, which we would consider minimum, and then sufficient amounts of vitamins K1 and K2 in the same capsule. The dose on that one is 1. And then we have the Omega 1000. Each gel cap has 1,000 milligrams of essential omega-3 fatty acids. That would be consistent with high EPA and DHA. And we've talked about those before as well. And then we have our Daily Multi-Complete. And this is a big daddy because the dose on this one, very important, and I didn't say the dose in the Omega 1000, sorry about that. The dose on that one is 3. But the dose on the Daily Multi-Complete is also 3. So this is 3 per day to get all of the things that we need. And by doing these 3 formulations, you're able to really help yourself. And again, that link to get all of them is sherwood.tv/His Glory. Why is it /His Glory? Because the proceeds are used to benefit His Glory Ministries. So when you have an opportunity to use these particular formulations, you're also having the opportunity to benefit Pastor Dave and Christine's ministry to carry this message forward. So it's a wonderful thing. And again, I recommend you all use these and get your family use them because these are the best that we know. But there is an interesting ingredient in there in one of in the Daily Multi-Complete. It's called magnesium. And we're going to talk about that tonight because it's a very unique mineral. So let's talk about magnesium.
Well, magnesium, the magnitude of magnesium's importance in the human body really can't be understated. This mineral is the 4th most abundant mineral in the human body, and it's responsible for over 300 biochemical or metabolic reactions. In fact, the muscles need it to contract. So if magnesium gets low, your muscles get weak.
Yep, sure.
Nerves need magnesium to send and receive messages. So if magnesium gets low, the nervous system does not function as optimally as it could or should. It keeps your heart beating steadily, and it keeps your blood pressure in check. That's right. It helps to vasodilate the vessels, and it helps manage blood pressure. Your immune system actually uses it to stay strong. It's a component of a healthy immune system. And magnesium helps make protein, helps make bone, and it helps make DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the cellular components of your genetic material. Magnesium is also pivotal in triggering the relaxation pathways in the body. So one reason for this is that magnesium aids in the production of what's called GABA. Gamma aminobutyric acid is what GABA stands for. This is a neurotransmitter that actually soothes the nervous system, and it promotes good deep sleep. People who have low levels of GABA may be overly anxious. So magnesium can also help calm anxiety, and it can help you get good deep sleep. So magnesium has a multitude of essential functions in the human system.
Now, there are a lot of things that happen to deplete magnesium. First of all, we've not let the soil rest, and the magnesium comes from the soil. And secondly, when the plants get harvested, they usually get harvested before they're ripe. And so the magnesium comes from the soil up into the plants when the plants turn green with the chlorophyll. So if plants are harvested before they turn green, the magnesium is stuck in the ground. So hence, there's a lot of magnesium deficiency in our plants. But there are things that we do every day that are consistent with depletion of magnesium, and one would be exercise. Just the high stress of exercise depletes magnesium. Then stress itself depletes magnesium, and then finally being sick. We want to be sick less. We don't want we don't want to have sickness. We want to be sick less.
That's good.
The idea of being sick also depletes magnesium. Excessive alcohol consumption can also lead to inadequate magnesium levels. And again, excessive is certainly in the eye of genetics, because there's an enzyme that breaks down alcohol fast or slow. Alcohol dehydrogenase, exactly. So, again, some people can have one drink of alcohol and be intoxicated. Some people can have 3 drinks and not be intoxicated. So again, excess alcohol, and it's not about whether you get drunk or not. It's just the body reaches an excess because the alcohol is a toxin. So again, stress, exercise, being sick, and too much alcohol will deplete magnesium. Which forms of magnesium are the best? Because there are many.
Yes, well, magnesium must be delivered in a bioavailable form that's actually easy for your body to absorb. And certain forms of magnesium are best suited for sleep and anxiety, while others are most helpful for headaches or even constipation. The main forms of magnesium are magnesium glycinate, or also called glycerophosphate. So you kind of have to know how to read labels. Magnesium glycinate is the same as glycerophosphate. It's best for sleep and for anxiety. Magnesium glycinate is ideal for stress relief. It has the lowest rate of diarrhea. So the threshold for magnesium is loose stools. So if it's causing loose stools, you got to back off your dose and find your own personal threshold. And magnesium glycinate is less aggravating to the GI tract than compared to other forms. And other forms are like magnesium citrate. This is the one that if you have constipation or you have a motility problem with your bowels, you may want to take some magnesium citrate or sulfate to help with this constipation. It's commonly administered as a saline laxative even before surgery. So magnesium citrate / sulfate are good for those who have constipation or motility issues. Then there's magnesium malate. This is a highly absorbable form, goes across the GI tract into the system, and is very helpful for headaches, believe it or not, heartburn. We do a lot of proton pump inhibitors or medications for heartburn when it could be a magnesium deficiency. Magnesium malate is also very good for depression. The brain requires magnesium to function properly. Magnesium is also good for an upset stomach. So sometimes that upset stomach is coming from stress and anxiety, and it may actually be a magnesium deficiency that is created by your current situation or your internal climate.
Now, you'll find it appropriate to understand that the Daily Multi-Complete, which we have there in the His Glory bundle, again, Sherwood.tv/His Glory, has 100 milligrams of magnesium glycinate and magnesium malate. So it's got kind of the two forms that we prefer best. So it's
Good
already
blend.
packaged there for you, a really good blend. Now, the prevalence of low or deficient magnesium, called hypomagnesia, is actually, it's very common. 75% of the population is said to be low in magnesium. And I think that's very telling because of what we just said. So we need magnesium. A couple other points that we should understand is magnesium is important not just for energy creation, but also energy preservation. There's a molecule we've talked about a few weeks ago called ATP.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Or adenosine triphosphate. And magnesium is actually required to bind onto that to transfer that energy to other cells. So think about that. And magnesium, by the way, it can diminish when we have a lot of aluminum in the body. When you think about aluminum, I want you to think about deodorant. Deodorant has aluminum. So you could say that the more aluminum people take in, potentially that could drive down the amount of magnesium. So we're going to look back probably at some point in history and go, what were we thinking slathering aluminum all under our arms?
Well,
So,
and also
yeah.
think about the amount of soda pop some people drink
Oh, my
coming
God,
out of
yeah.
aluminum cans.
There you go.
So the soda can be a very large aluminum leach, pulling that aluminum right into the product, and we're just drinking that a can or two or three or four or 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 a day, 365 days of the year. It might be causing us a problem.
That's right. So there are 7 signs we're going to give you that are associated very quickly with magnesium deficiency or low magnesium. Now, when I say low magnesium, it's not something you can check in the blood, because blood or RBC magnesium is not sufficient in regard to checking for magnesium sufficiency. So that's the wrong test. So don't even go there. It's not going to be accurate. So there's 7 signs. What are they?
One can be breathing difficulty. So individuals that suffer from respiratory issues are often deficient in magnesium, and especially those with asthma. Asthma is worse when magnesium levels are low because of a buildup of this mineral calcium in the lungs, making it difficult to breathe. So magnesium is kind of a director of calcium, if you will, and it aids keeping calcium in solution instead of depositing it in your tissues.
Also, the number 2 one, if you have like an arrhythmia or irregular heartbeat, many times magnesium deficiency is a major contributor.
Muscle cramps or twitches, even tremors can be related to magnesium deficiency. Lots of people complain of this thing called restless legs at nighttime. They lay down and go to sleep and their legs are just restless and agitated, and it keeps them awake. It could be related to magnesium deficiency. And again, the relationship between magnesium and calcium gets disrupted in the nerve cells, and it results in overexcited tissue. And when you lay down, your body's trying to relax, but those tissues are still excited or restless.
Another one is high blood pressure and heart disease, as Dr. Michele talked about earlier. Without magnesium, you can't dilate the vessels properly. And dilation would be like, here's the vessel. This is contraction, gets smaller, and dilation gets larger. The smooth muscle cells of the vessels will relax. So that's called contraction, or called dilation. So if we don't have magnesium, we cannot do that.
Also, mental health disorders. Anxiety and depression have been attributed to, in part, to magnesium insufficiency or deficiency. It really helps relay information between the body and the brain. So depleted stores of magnesium may lead to nerve or brain damage. As we referenced before, it can lead to restless legs. It can also lead to restless brain if it's improperly balanced.
That's good. Osteoporosis is one for sure. We touched on that earlier. Well, we talk a lot about vitamin D and calcium for bone. Magnesium is just as important because people who found that were deficient in magnesium had lower bone mass. So people with intakes of higher magnesium had higher bone density. So it's not just association, it's actually cause and effect. Remember, magnesium is essential for vitamin D to turn on calcium absorption. So magnesium is required to stimulate this hormone calcitonin, which draws calcium out of the muscles and tissues and into the bones. How cool is that? So we have to have magnesium for good bone formation.
We also have to have good magnesium balance to make sure our inflammation pathways don't spin out of control. Because low magnesium levels are related or linked to chronic inflammation. And we know that chronic inflammation is the precursor to all, I said all, chronic sickness and disease. So one of the drivers of aging, obesity, and chronic disease can potentially be low magnesium.
There's a lot of foods out there. You need to take the His Glory Daily Multi-Complete for sure, but you also need to think about foods that contain magnesium. Dark chocolate.
Oh, at the top of the list, that
go.
Dark chocolate. You got to turn the label over, though, and look at how much sugar that dark chocolate has in it.
Don't want to have sugar.
You don't want to ruin.
What's the percentage we want?
Of sugar?
No, of dark chocolate.
Oh, 80-20.
80-20. There you go. At least avocados are good.
Nuts are good.
Seeds are good.
Legumes, if you don't have a sensitivity to those things called lectins, but legumes are good.
You can use some tofu, but make sure it's not genetically modified.
Semi-ripe bananas.
Leafy greens. Leafy greens are a great source of magnesium. Remember the chlorophyll-magnesium connection. Think about that.
Believe it or not, wild-caught fatty fish, which is high in omegas, also has a dose of magnesium for you.
You can get some also in Himalayan or Celtic sea salt. Himalayan or Celtic sea salt. Both of those have a good amount of magnesium.
Last but not least, sprouts. You can grow your own sprouts in your kitchen with the light of the window. Sprouts do a body good.
There you go. So the bottom line is that we need magnesium. We've made our case for that. Most people are deficient. That's why we wanted to make sure we had a multivitamin with a good amount of magnesium in there. And please understand, you may even need more. So as we work with many of you, the His Glory Daily Complete Multi might not be enough magnesium. So we may have to come up with a different amount of magnesium on top of that. But the main source that we try to lean to is magnesium glycinate. In other words, magnesium glycerol phosphate. Those are one and the same. And we also use a little bit of magnesium malate, which are both in this multi. But the bottom line is we want to try to use primarily magnesium glycinate. So I want to make sure we get that up there in the system. Remember, His Glory is where you find those. Sherwood.tv/His Glory. The proceeds go back into the ministry and they help people. But we want to help you help people better. So get those vitamins and minerals there quickly through the Daily Multi-Complete, along with your vitamin D and your omega-3. When we get back, we'll talk about a really interesting perspective on something called fear. Wonder what that could be. We'll be right back. If you knew that a certain course of action would transform people's lives for the better, would you share it with them? Would you keep it to yourself or shout it from the rooftops on every platform you could find? If you ever wondered why we do what we do and why we're so bold, maybe this clarifies it. We've seen so many people's health transformed, and as a result, so many lives and families changed. That's why you're watching this video.
If I saw that your house was on fire, I'd knock in your door and I'd come and help you. Well, your body is your house, and too many people's houses are burning down. But there's hope and health available to you. Take 12 seconds to go to Sherwood.tv and join our free newsletter.
So welcome to this week's perspective. We're going to talk about something very unique this week in perspective, and I think you'll find it interesting. I want to answer two questions for you. Two questions that are very prevalent here in our world, and I'm going to comment on them and give you perspective that maybe you haven't heard before. The first question is, do I need to be concerned about viral shedding from vaccinated people? The second question is, do I need to fear COVID variants? Of course, we're hearing a lot now about the Delta variant may become the most contagious variant, it may become the dominant variant. So the first question first, do I need to be concerned about viral shedding from a vaccinated person? There's a lot of people out there that are purported experts, and they're very smart people, but they're making platforms on creating this concept of fear regarding being around people who are vaccinated. So, in other words, it is communicated that people who are vaccinated, because they are quote unquote shedding the virus, that you need to be scared and you need to be concerned about being around them. And I'll comment on the fear part of that in a moment, but let's talk about the shedding aspect very quickly. If a person indeed does share or shed this viral load of the COVID-19, this COVID spike protein that we see, if that's possible, and it's still not proven whether it will, look, every person that's vaccinated is not going to shed because every person responds to vaccines differently. So again, it's ridiculous to talk about every single person doing every single thing all the time because we're all different. We've talked about that. But if a person is shedding the viral spike proteins, if they've been vaccinated, and you have also a person over here who has not been vaccinated, who gets the COVID-19 virus and is contagious and is shedding also the spike proteins, do you understand that in both cases, it's shedding the same type of spike protein? So if you say on one hand that one person who has been vaccinated, we need to be scared of them because they're shedding, then that makes you also have to say that I got to be scared of the person who's not been vaccinated who may be carrying around a virus. So you see the problem there with that. In both cases, it is about fear. And in both cases, we need not fear because the Bible says in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So if God didn't give us a spirit of fear, who did? It's our enemy. So any way you look at it, any way you slice that pie, so to speak, in either case, we still have to walk around with a no fear attitude, or we are displaying the attitude of our enemy. Furthermore, if we're listening to experts that are broadcasting any type of fear in the sense that you need to be scared of, you need to be concerned about all this, we need to be very cautious about that and consider the off button, because many times if we listen to that too much, it will mess our world around. Do you think for one second, friend, that God put you on this earth and He was surprised about this coronavirus, surprised about the vaccine? Do you think for one second He's surprised about that? No. God knows the beginning from the end and everything in between. So He put us on the earth right now in the sound, you're in the sound of my voice, so He put us on this earth to live our life out with no fear of what man can do to us. Instead, we're to live our life out with high focus on what God is doing through us. So it's not man, what man can do to us, it's what God can do through us. And so with that said, we don't need to be feared. The second question I'm going to give you perspective on is, do I need to fear this new COVID variant? The same argument is true. Viruses have begun to change since the beginning of time. That will not change. They'll continue to variate over time. Hence, the need potentially, as some would say, for new vaccines every year. Now, whether you're a non-vax person or a vax person, regardless, you need to understand that viruses do change every year. And because of that, our bodies have an opportunity to adjust and adapt. Do we need to be concerned about that? The same answer is true. The answer is no, we don't, because if God put us here on this earth right now, He surely knew about the variations of the virus. So therefore, why would we be scared of something that God already knew about? Because why would God put us on this earth so he could take us out with a virus that surprised him? Now, God is an all-knowing God. His ways, his thoughts, his plans are deeper than ours. Many times people say, well, the Delta variant is going to be the most contagious. Perspective. That might be God's plan. Get this, think outside the box. That might be God's plan to make it more contagious, to go around and create herd immunity so that he could build our immune system up, so we'd be adapted to that, so we'd be more resilient towards viruses, specifically the SARS-CoV-2 in the future. We need to think that everything works out for the good for those that love God, and nothing is a surprise to God. Again, 2 Timothy 1:7, for God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. He didn't give us fear, but he gave us power, love, and sound mind. You know what that is? That's called confidence. And so don't be scared of anything. If you find yourself consumed by fear, speaking about fear, listening and reading about fear all the time, stop, breathe, relax, check yourself, because we need to stop the behavior that leads to that contagion called fear, because fear will cripple not just the immune system, but fear will cripple your faith. And I want you to know that faith and fear can't exist in the same realm. It's like oil and water. They do not mix. And so understand that whether you believe all this stuff that's being said or not, regardless, if it's broadcasted under the veil of fear, it is not from God. He says multiple times, do not fear. And I know some of you are going to put in the comments now, well, Dr. So-and-so said, great, Dr. So-and-so can have their opinion. But I'm going to keep mine, and Dr. Michele is going to keep hers on the side, not just of God's opinion, but of God's infallible, solid, unchangeable, truthful word that sets us free. And his words say, do not fear. Some would say, well, you got to be informed. I agree, but do not fear. Everything, run it through the filter. Do not fear. I hope that helps you with the perspective tonight. Don't fear that so-called shedding. Don't worry about it. Do the same thing you would do to prepare for anything, even with unvaccinated people. Do the same thing you do to augment, uplift, regulate, and help your immune system do what it's supposed to do. Don't fear the variant called Delta. Don't fear any variant. Only fear God. And fearing God is living in awe of him, so we can have a life that is free to live in a fearless way. When we get back, we're going to talk about something that affects everybody. That thing called shame. We'll be right back.
Do you want to be well? In the Bible, book of John, chapter 5, Jesus came across a great number of disabled people who lived near a particular pool where some found healing. Dr. Michele, tell us the story.
One who had been there, an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well?
What kind of a question is that? After 38 years, of course he wanted to get well, right? But what else does the story say?
Sir, the man replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Then Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your mat and walk. At once the man was cured.
There is so much to this story. But here's our question. Do you want to get well? Jesus asked the man to get up and do something. And that's what we're asking you to do. Maybe you know the right course of action that will change the direction of your life. If you do, then take our encouragement, get up, and do it.
If you want to be well but don't know where to go, take 12 seconds to go to Sherwood.tv and join our free newsletter.
So welcome back. So we're going to talk about the thing that's we've been kind of doing a series on for a while, this thing called frauds, Frauds, which equate, as you can see, that puts us in a place of dis-ease or discord. Dis-ease is really a way to say we're lacking peace. So if you backdoor that back out of that, you can say, what causes us to lack peace? It's these F-R-A-U-D and S's. And what are those things?
Well, at the top of the list is fear. False evidence appearing real.
Just talked about
those
that,
things
didn't we?
that live in your head, and they aren't really even a reality. They're like kind of like made up things.
Yeah.
Things that make us run in fear. Resentment, anger, unforgiveness, D for disappointment, and then S for shame.
I don't think we talk about shame enough, because shame is one of the things that is part of Satan's main game. He wants to get us feeling miserable about things that we have done, or things that we haven't done, or things we've said or haven't said, making you sort of wallow around in your failures, if you will. What is the definition of shame? Because that's our focus for tonight.
Shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress that's caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish types of behavior that we've either done or been participatory in.
And shame's big, because shame can be pretty heavy in our lives. People can live in shame for a number of years because of the decisions they made, because of the consequences of the decisions they made, and sometimes live in shame of things they wish they had done and didn't do. So it goes reverse, whether you did it or didn't do it. And shame is something that the Bible talks about quite literally, beginning in the verse, or beginning in the book of Genesis. And it's interesting because shame was not always in the world at all. Actually, there was a time when it was not in the world. It was going back to the time where God ideally put man and woman, those people known as Adam and Eve, in the garden. And at that point in time, it was considered the perfect arrangement. Man and woman, Adam and Eve, had the perfect relationship with each other. They had a perfect relationship with the ground, with the dirt, and they had a perfect relationship with God. What should I do? Each other, God, the dirt. So I made a cross there, didn't I?
Yes,
It was a perfect relationship that they had. And shame was not a part of that. There was no need for shame. But there was something that happened back in Genesis chapter 2, going to verse 3, and this is the fall of man. And I want you to read those scriptures, if you would, beginning in, we're going to read Genesis 2:25, then I'm going to comment on that one. Then I want to read Genesis 3:10 and comment on that one.
Yeah, Genesis 2:25, Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame.
Okay, so let's stop right there for a moment. This is Genesis 2. This is before they had the infamous conversation with the snake or the serpent. And this is a time where they were just naked. They were hanging out everywhere. There was no shame at all. They were naked and didn't know it. In other words, to make a play on words of a well-known show, they were naked and not afraid. Right? So they weren't afraid at all. So there they were, just literally hanging out. There was no need to cover themselves because they didn't think, get this, about their flesh.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking about their flesh. They were only thinking about the relationship they had with God, because they walked and talked to Him every day. And then a perfect relationship with all the animals and all the plants and the dirt and each other. And they had no concept or awareness of the flesh. I want you to think about that. But then there was a conversation they had with the enemy. And as we know, Eve took a bite of the apple of the forbidden tree, the knowledge of good and evil, and gave some to Adam, and he took a bite too. And then what happened in Genesis chapter 3:10?
Well,
Chapter 3, verse
they
10.
were walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam heard the Lord's voice. And he answered, he said, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself.
Okay, so here we see the first time this concept of fear/shame, because you look at those interpretations here, and when Adam says, I was afraid because I was naked, first time he realized he was naked. And this is preceding, or just right after, I should say, they got those fig leaves and covered themselves. What do you think they covered? Did they cover their face, or did they cover their private parts?
I would venture to say the latter.
I think they covered their private parts. Why? Because they were aware then of their flesh. And plus, if they covered their face, they couldn't see where they were going through the garden that day. So I'm going to assume they covered their private parts. For the first time, mankind was aware of his flesh or her flesh in that case.
Can you say shame?
Shame. So they, in other words, when God was saying, Adam, oh, Adam, where are you? Like he really didn't know where he was, but he knew where he was. Adam said, I heard you in the garden. So Adam heard God talking, but he failed to acknowledge him, and instead he hid because he was afraid. Or in other words, another interpretation, he was ashamed. So he was ashamed because of what he had done and realized now his eyes were open. He was able to see flesh, and he was able to see sin, and he was able to feel that. He knew he had done wrong. Because he was ashamed, he hid. What's the lesson for us? When we are ashamed of something we did or have done, we don't need to run. We don't need to hide, because God is always looking for us and asking us where we are. The worst thing to do is hide and run, because it makes the shame deepen. Now, shame is also talked about in Psalm 25:3. What does that say?
It says, no one who waits on the Lord will ever be put to shame.
Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. When we talk about this, no one who waits on the Lord will ever be put to shame. What does that word wait mean? I want you to think of a waiter at a table. The waiter says to you at the table, how can I help you? How can I help you? What would you like? How may I serve you? What can I do for you? The waiter is always asking those questions, what he can do for the people sitting at the table. This context means that those people who are waiting on the Lord, they're waiting on him all the time, they will never be put to shame. So if you're going to wait on the Lord, we're supposed to ask him how we can work for him, how we can help him. Lord, what do you need? Instead of perpetually saying, God, I need your help. Many times we spend all of our time asking God to help us. When, yes, we need God's help, but our mission to get God's help is actually to ask him for help. And when Adam had a problem, instead of asking God for help, he should have went to him and said, God, what can you got to get me out of this. As many he was talking to the serpent, he could have said, God, I need you right now. Can you help me with this? That would have been proper. But at the same time, he didn't ask God what he could do either, for him. So I want you to get the idea here that our job as believers, knowing full well we may do some dumb things and live in some shame, we shouldn't stay in the shame, because our mission is to go back to God and say, God, I'm going to ask for forgiveness, because 1 John 1:9 says he is faithful and just to forgive us for all the sins as we confess with our heart. And really, it's important to understand that, but the bottom line is, he wants us to ask him how we can help him. And when we do that, we will never experience this thing called shame. Because if we're helping God, we're not going to be doing anything goofy or wrong or stupid, just like Adam and Eve did. So you get the idea. Now, we also see this in Psalm 23:2.
He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He refreshes my soul, and he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake.
When we're on the wrong path, we know we're on the wrong path. When we go down the wrong roads, we know we're on the wrong roads. And if we realize it, we're like, oh my gosh, I took a wrong turn. And we can live in shame because we're running late for things, we're late for appointments. But we can live in shame because we're running late for what God wanted us to do. We're off course. We're off his direct path. And he is the one, as we see here in Psalm 23, that leads us down those right paths. He's going to guide us down those right paths. If we're on the right paths, that's equivalent to our previous verse in Psalm 25, talking about the idea that we're saying, God, where are you? How can I help you? And he will say, I want you to help me by getting on this road so you can do this job for me right now in this time in history. So with that said, each of us, there is a mission and there's a purpose for our life. There's a mission and a purpose for your life that only you can do and accomplish by asking God how you can help him accomplish his mission for you. And when you do that, shame will not be a part of your life. And going back again to Adam, I think about that situation. How many times have I done something dumb and then not wanted to even talk to God? I want to run, like I can get away from him. Like, really?
Not you.
Yeah, well, we all have, and I mean, nobody likes to admit it because admitting it is hard. But the admission is like a confession. And if the confession is beneficial and we have to confess our sins, we can get them off of our chest. So if you're out there and you say, man, I am living in shame because of A, B, C, D, I'd say let go of that shame right now, because God is looking for you. He's waiting on you. Just like Adam, he's calling your name. He's pursuing you, and he's saying, I'm here for you because I've got work for you. Remember, when you confess it, you're going to get forgiven, and he's going to embrace you, and you're right there in his arms as you've always been. But at that time you realize it, and at that time you realize it by saying, Father, how can I get on the right path? And he'll show you the right path, because the Bible says that he will guide you on the right path. And if we wait on him, asking him again what we can do for him, he is not ever going to put shame on us. So God doesn't put shame on us. That's the point. The shame comes from us living in a way that's contrary to what God wants us to do. So shame is not part of the life of the believer, right?
That is correct.
So you need to know if you're living in shame, let that go, because it's not God's destiny for you at all. And with that said, shame is not the name of the game with God. Shame, however, is the main game of the enemy. So we need to not live and play anymore in the shame game. So let's live in the realm of grace and forgiveness and do all we're supposed to do to bring glory to his name by asking him how we can help him. And we can't help him, we can't do our job if we're unhealthy. That's why this concept of hope and health is important, because we have hope in Jesus. We have hope to know that when we finish our mission on this earth, we're going to go to heaven and spend eternity. I'm going to change addresses. This is all that's going to happen. I'm already an eternal being, and I'm going to spend eternity in my next most eternal address. And I don't have to think about anything, because I'm not going to live in fear. We talked about that tonight too. So let's live the way God intended. No fear, full of hope. No fear, full of faith. No fear, abounding in grace. And no fear, full of health. And therefore there is no shame in that game. So have a good night. I hope you've enjoyed our show. Good one, huh?
Good one. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time on Hope and Health.